Chapter 1. The Ruins of Mobocracy. The story of democracy in Africa is a sad one, which is mainly about debt, poverty, civil wars, famine and disease that signifies bad governance. The failure of the African continent and its inherent inability to grow is mostly because they practice a form of democracy that is alien and imposed on them by the imperialist powers. Many African countries are underdeveloped today because their leaders play to the gallery and dictates of the West, whose main interest is to ensure that the continent remains a cheap source of raw materials, which has inhibited growth and good governance. For Nigeria, the story is starkly. The country has bled for over 60 years from maladministration resulting from the utter disregard of constitution, the abuse of power and the violation of the rule of law by the political leadership in both present and previous administrations, dating back to the period of independence in 1960 from the Britain imperialist authorities. But in 2017, for the first time since independence, the people of Nigeria finally found a voice in the youth population, though by happenstance linked to the fortunate insurrection against police brutality, tagged #EndSARS. This agitation by the youth spiraled into a political consciousness that found expression in a global youth movement for change in Nigeria. The 2023 general election was timely and it provided a platform for the people to express and achieve their long-awaited dream of a new and well-governed Nigeria. The signing into law of the amended electoral law by President Buhari in February 2022, which authorized INEC to use the Bimodal Voter Accreditation System, BVAS, electronic device for the verification and transmission of election results, further paid credence to the electoral process and galvanized the hope and aspiration of a large number of people in the country, as well as in the diaspora, especially the younger generation, who found a basis for renewed faith in the electoral process. As Providence would have it, the party primaries threw up a candidate that the youths found to be confident, competent and credible, in person of Peter Obi. His emergence spurred them to seek a common front under the aegis of the Obidient movement, and to stand by him with full support of his presidential aspirations. This youthful and vibrant energy was what led to the electoral tsunami that swept across the entire nation during the presidential election, as millions of young, first-timer voters came out in unprecedented numbers to cast their vote for the Labour Party candidates, Peter Obi and Daddy Baba Ahmed. The elections were held but the fallout was disastrous, to say the least. It was an unforetold outcome. The INEC and the federal government of Nigeria, FGN, made a mockery of the entire electoral process by their blatant public perpetration of unacceptable acts of election malpractices, coupled with various forms of disenfranchisement of voters before and during the elections. The election was grossly characterized by extreme violence and intimidation across the country. By their acts, the FGN and INEC clearly demonstrated that they are incapable of defending the tenets of modern democracy, such as the rule of law and the separation of powers. Rather, they have chosen to further destroy the already adulterated version of the democracy presumably practiced in the country. They both sidelined and failed to comply with every single electoral guideline as provided in the Electoral Act. It is in this light that the form of democracy that is practiced in Nigeria, especially, going by the brigandage of the 2023 general elections, as conducted by INEC, supported and accepted by President Muhammadu Buhari, can be aptly described as a mobocracy, a government of the mob, by the mob and for the mob. The rascality and willful disregard and violation of orderliness and the acts of thuggery that the APC exhibited during the entire elections are clear demonstration of the institutionalization of thuggery in the electoral process and a clear evidence of the sordid type of democracy we practice in the country. Predictably, the verdict of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, PPT, on the LP and PDP suits challenging the validity of the results of the elections, and the hasty manner that INEC pronounced Bola Tinubu as the president-elect, has followed the same insensitive pattern of the FG and the electoral body. The court dismissed the petitions as frivolous and returned Tinubu as duly elected. The petitioners, Abubakar and Obi, went ahead to file their appeal at the Supreme Court, asking the apex court to reverse the PPT judgment. A move many believe is an effort in futility, as it has become quite obvious that the FG and the ruling party APC are desperate and determined to retain power at any cost. Movement for Change Worldwide, MFCW, stands by the principles of good governance, accountability, inclusiveness, equity and justice, which we promote as the acceptable minimum standards. Hence, we are calling the federal government to re-examine its position and embrace the practice of modern democracy. On the part of the international communities, we urge them to play their role as custodians of democratic values and ensure the support of pro-democracy groups and mount pressure on the government to abide by the practices and tenets of democracy as enshrined in her constitution as government of the people, for the people and by the people.